Disney is one of those companies that kind of subscribe to everything that Patrice Cullors wants you to believe in. A really tricky time for Disney because you know what? The rest of the world just isn't there. The rest of America just isn't there. They're not psyched to go and take their kids to some of the shows that Disney has been putting out. And you know what? Disney just kind of has a bad habit of ticking off everyone, including the small people community that were really kind of annoyed because, hey, you know what? Snow White and Seven Dwarfs was casting tall people. It's like they just couldn't do it. They just couldn't figure it out. They kept making mistake after mistake after mistake. And we now just found out how much these mistakes might be really costing them. I think it could actually cost this guy, Bob Iger, his job. Look, he's trying to sell off some of these assets, trying to get creative. He wants to sell ABC. Good news for you who do not like The View, because that means I suspect Whoopi and Joy and the rest of them wouldn't be too long for the place. But anyway, here's Bob Iger speaking way back this summer on CNBC saying he wanted to sell these assets.
Transformative work is dealing with businesses that are no-growth businesses and what to do about them, and particularly the linear business, which we are expansive in our thinking about, and we're going to look expansively about opportunities there because clearly it's a business that is going to continue to struggle.
Well, let's stop there for a second then and let me ask you about it. We're talking, I guess, ABC, the network, the stations, but then the cable networks as well.
Yes, correct.
FX, Nat Geo. Is it possible you would look to sell them?
We're going to be expansive. I think if you can interpret what that word means.
Wow. Expansive. If you can interpret what that means, I can interpret it. It means we're going to sell them. We're going to sell them. So, hey, take that, Whoopi. Anyway, the other thing that they could they get out of would be this Snow White production with Rachel Zegler, who's just been a train wreck from the very beginning. She said all kinds of things about, Snow White herself. She doesn't like the character. She doesn't like the plot. I'm not entirely sure why she's in the movie. You can see our sponsorship coming onto the screen again, like cpminvestments.com. That's actually, there we go. Anyway, look, Rachel Zegler doesn't like the character, doesn't like the story. She really shouldn't be in the film. But in the meantime, Disney has already spent an alleged $330 million on its live action Snow White. Okay, headline. Disney has reportedly spent $330 million on its live-action Snow White movie. So is it any wonder that they're really concerned? This is according to Mail Online. They're worried. They're worried the whole thing's going to bomb because, nobody likes Rachel Zegler right now. The dwarfs are all angry because, it was Snow White and the six tall people and one dwarf. Yeah, that was kind of a problem. And it's just not looking like it's going to fly. Plus, you get a little problem over here. That would be courtesy of the Daily Wire, which decided through Keep Productions, one of its production arms, to release a movie starring Brett Cooper as Snow White. This is like, now they're up against the real Snow White.
Once upon a time, in time a prince would come.
Yeah, that's the movie that you can see with your kids, right? Anyway, I wish them so much success with that. So $330 million possibly, if that report is true, down the drain. The stock price is under so much pressure. So in comes a guy named Nelson Peltz, who runs something called Tryon Funds. It's a big hedge fund, right? And he's an activist investor, and he gets in there and says, gee, you're doing this, and this wrong. You're spending too much money. You don't have the right priorities. You got to actually shape up. And so Bob Iger, the one who's trying to get the place sort of together in his own little way, is under a lot of pressure. And because he's under so much pressure, he knows he's got to make changes. And so now he just brought in a new chief financial officer, maybe who will help make sure they don't spend $330 million on a production of Snow White that they're really nervous about. The new guy, he's from PepsiCo. And he's been through these kinds of things before, right? Where you have shareholder activists that are like, hey, what's going on? So he's seen this movie before. And so Bob's hoping that the new guy from PepsiCo can actually help him out. And perhaps, his name is Hugh Johnston, perhaps shape things up in his favor. Apparently, he brought revenue at PepsiCo to about $86 billion last year from $58 billion back in 2010. So he's certainly got some street cred on Wall Street, if you would. And I'll tell you, Disney needs a lot of that these days.